Welcome to the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the second quarter of 2022. Welcome to Lesson 3 in the series on Genesis. It's titled Cain and His Legacy, ready for teaching on April 16, and my name's Percy Harrold. Monday, April 11, the two offerings. The contrast between Cain and Abel, as reflected in their names, did not just concern their personalities. It also was manifested in their respective occupations. While Cain was a tiller of the ground, Genesis 4 verse 2, a profession requiring physical hard work, Abel was a keeper of sheep in the same verse, a profession implying sensitivity and compassion. Cain was the producer of the fruit of the ground, Abel the keeper of the sheep. These two occupations not only explain the nature of the two offerings, fruit of the ground from Cain and a sheep from Abel, but they also account for the two different psychological attitudes and mentalities associated with the two offerings. Cain was working to acquire the fruit he would produce, while Abel was careful to keep the sheep he had received. Read Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 to 5, and Hebrews 11, verse 4. Why did God accept Abel's offering and reject Cain's offering? How are we to understand what happened here? Genesis 4, beginning at verse 1. Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. And Hebrews 11, verse 4, by faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it he, being dead, still speaks. Without the shedding of blood, Ellen White writes in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 71, there could be no remission of sin. And they, Cain and Abel, were to show their faith in the blood of Christ as the promised atonement by offering the firstlings of the flock in sacrifice. Besides this, the firstfruits of the earth were to be presented before the Lord as a thank offering. End of quote. While Abel complied with God's instructions and offered the vegetable offering in addition to the animal burnt offering, Cain neglected to do so. He didn't bring an animal to be sacrificed, but only an offering of the fruit of the ground. It was an act of open disobedience, in contrast to the attitude of his brother. Often this story has been viewed as a classic case of salvation by faith, Abel and his blood offering, in contrast to an attempt to earn salvation by works, Cain and his fruit of the ground. Although these offerings must have had spiritual significance, they did not have any magic values in themselves. They were always merely symbols, images, pointing to the God who provided the sinner not only sustenance, but also redemption. And so to finish the day, read Micah 6:7 and Isaiah 1:11. How can we take the principle applied in these texts and apply it to our lives and worship? Micah 6 verse 1, Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? And Isaiah 1 verse 11. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices to me, says the Lord? I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed cattle. I do not delight in the blood of bulls, or of lambs, or goats. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.